Would you consider yourself a high-level entrepreneur? Now, most likely, if you're listening to this, you definitely are. And what I've heard over and over and over again is it's hard to find like-minded people that are like that too. Again, I'm from Maine, so I totally understand how difficult it can be. Thank goodness I have an amazing online community, so I know tons of them. And that is exactly why we are starting this brand new mastermind group with high-level, like-minded entrepreneurs, the ones that you can go alongside with that will help move you to the next level, let alone with kick butt coaching from me, because I like to slap you around, both on focus and on strategy. So if you're looking to double or triple this year, which I know most of you are, I want you to go ahead and apply and see if it's a good fit for you. I will totally tell you if it's not and if I wouldn't do it if I were you. But go to eventualmillionaire.com/apply. We are looking for amazing, like-minded entrepreneurs. My previous mastermind members have told me it is life changing. So take the time today, fill out the very quick application, and we'll see if it's a fit. Take care.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to the Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jamie Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I am Jamie Masters, and today on the show, we have David Neagle. Now, he's got an amazing book called The Millions Within. How perfect for this show. He also has a multi-million-dollar coaching company called Life Is Now, which is also awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Jamie, it is such a pleasure to be here. I can't wait to get into this thing.
You have no idea. So your topics just seem perfect for my people. So can you first go over what the heck the millions within are? Because a lot of people are probably like, yeah, millions within are good, but I want millions without or out, right? Outside.
Yeah, that's a funny story about that book, because we were sitting around at a dinner in Vegas and we were bouncing around ideas for the book. The book was just about finished. And there was a friend of mine sitting there, and we all went around and we did this round table, and they said, "What does David help people do?" And she said, "He helps people find the millions within." And I was like, "That's the name of the book." So that's what it came from. But the idea is that whatever desire that we have inside is what we have the ability to express outside. So if a person wants to be a millionaire, they already have the ability to do it. They may not know that, they may not be aware of it, they may have not developed the skills to do it yet, but they absolutely have the ability to do it. And that's what the book is about, showing them how to do.
Okay. It's one thing to say, it's another thing to be in. And I know you work with clients, and this is what I wanted to get to the nitty gritty of, because people have heard, oh, well, of course, if you believe it, you can achieve it, which, don't get me wrong, cliche and true, but way harder to do in practice than it is just to say, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you actually work with clients to help them understand that and feel that, instead of just go, yeah, I know it?
Well, one of the first things that this is such a great question, right? Because when I start to work with a person, I really get an assessment of where they are in their own mindset. I know that there's a lot. You have like two camps out there, like mindsets complete BS and then mindsets everything. And a lot of really successful entrepreneurs are really doubling down on mindset is everything, but it has to be actionable or it's nothing, right? So, and I'm pretty much in that camp. So the idea is, what is their mindset about in regards to what they want to achieve in life? Because most people are programmed, like all of their mindset is about what is to keep them safe in life, what keeps them feeling with a relative amount of certainty, and how do they get through their life without too much damage, so to speak. So I really assess where they are in the spectrum, all of that, and then begin working on changing the most essential things first that are going to start getting them results as fast as possible. Because as soon as they start seeing the results, then you start changing the subconscious reaction of all the negative talk that keeps people from taking action or coming up with the right ideas or being resourceful or learning new skill sets, all the things that an entrepreneur needs to do in order to have the success that they want.
I love this. Okay. Because I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of clients, and sometimes you're like, I can't tell them like this because it's just not they have a shield up. They're never going to be able to feel it or hear it or do the things that this other guy could do super easy because he's already got the belief, right? And so it's really cool to peel apart where they're at. How do you assess them? How do you really understand where they're at?
So I think that when I first started, it's much different than now. So I've been doing this for 20 years, right? So I can pretty much read a person right off the bat and be like, okay, here's what's blocking them. Here's what their issue is. But that really doesn't do anything good for them. So I really believe in asking questions that get them to come to the realization of what is stopping them. Because here's the deal. If I say, Jamie, here's what your problem is, even if you agree with it, part of you is going to be like, that's bullshit. Like, you're going to push against it. You're going to get defensive in some way.
Yeah,
So
I'm
that's
perfect. You didn't know that? I'm totally perfect. Just so you know, just so we're clear.
But it's not going to help either one of us accomplish what we want. So what I do is I help draw out of them so that they can actually get that aha, so to speak, of what it is that's blocking them. So, like, for instance, if a person says, if I ask them, what do you want? I want to be a millionaire. Okay. I may ask them, why do they want that? Just to get like really clear on what is their reason behind it. That tells me one of two things. Is it coming from fear? Like, I want to be a millionaire so I don't ever have to worry about money again, so I don't have to work again, so I don't ever have to look at my bank account again, that type of thing. Because a lot of people pick a number just because of that reason. If that's the case, then I get them to work with a tangible number that actually has a positive meaning in their life. So there's that. Then once that's done, I'll ask them, why do you think you're not getting that yet? How come what is your reason for not achieving that yet? Where are you? And what that question tells me is this a person that is accepting responsibility for their life, or are they still in the belief of the outside life is causing my experience? Whether it's my husband, my wife, my partner, my upbringing, my past, somebody who did something wrong to me, and it's not a judgment for me. It's just to find out where they are in that belief. So now I know where to begin to work with them. If they're accepting like responsibility, if they're like, David, look, I understand it's me. I get it. It's my mindset. I've got these issues from my past. It's all me. Then I'm like, okay, cool. I know exactly where to begin to work with this person because they're already accepting responsibility. They still may have things that are hard for them to hear or confront, but at least they're going to accept responsibility for it. And I pretty much also know that whatever result they're going to get, because it's not a straight line, right? So sometimes they're not going to get a result that they want. We have to make a change. They're not going to sit around and blame something else for it, which is going to take an extraordinary amount of time to come back around to get them going again.
Yes.
But they're going to be really solid in, I did this, here's my result, let's get a different result. What do I need to change? And then work with them from there. So then once I do that, it's really about, I'm really big on getting people there quickly. The faster they can get there, the faster they're going to change their subconscious programming. The longer that they take, the more they're going to reinforce that it's hard, that they can't do it, that they're not smart enough, they're not pretty enough, whatever it is that they've got going on. They can't make more money than their father or their mother, all the traditional kinds of beliefs that people hear. So then I work on how do we get them there the fastest? And that is basically starting with, what do they see themselves being able to receive? Like, can you see yourself receiving $50,000 a month? Can you see yourself receiving $100,000 a month? Where are you on that spectrum? And I push them to the very edge of that belief, because in my experience, I have never seen somebody set a big goal that they don't believe that they can hit and start getting results. So I'm like, set the big goal, but let's start where you are and get the result there first. That increases their belief, their confidence, their awareness, and their enthusiasm for what it is that they're doing.
Oh, yes, because that momentum creates belief in themselves that they can actually do something instead of going, oh, I just can't do this either, right?
Yeah,
and then they don't even take the action.
For sure.
How do they stay? So it's interesting that you're talking about accepting responsibility. I find that really interesting. How do you, because I've noticed the exact same thing with clients, the ones that know and can just keep chugging along no matter what, like, yeah, okay, we're still working on it, moving forward, makes a huge difference instead of that cycle that you said, which turns them into a negative blame issue. When somebody's stuck in that, how do you help them? Or do you just let them do their thing? Like, give me some pieces for people that are listening that are stuck there potentially right now.
Well, so if in the beginning, when I ask that question about why do you think you're not getting there, if they're already in some kind of victim thinking, I work with them on understanding that it will never work for them to get where they want to go, because the moment that something happens, they're not going to accept responsibility for it. They abdicate their power to whatever happened, and then they become powerless. So it's all about them taking back their power or recognizing that they have it to begin with, depending how they disassociated as a child,
Yep.
and then getting them to step into that, right? So if a person slips into it, I'm just like, okay, so you're telling me you want to give your power over to this thing, and then they're kind of like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that.
Never mind, renege.
Right. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Unless you get, and the other thing, the fair thing to say is that some people have some really major core wounds, like they had really traumatic childhood. So if something like that gets triggered, then I may take them through, like I have a program called Date with Your Dark Side, where they go through a 3-day process of really extricating that stuff that happened as a kid. And then we give them the tools to be able to deal with it as it comes up in their progression towards where they want to go. So they know how to handle it and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny, as entrepreneurs, we're pulling up all these beliefs that like if I just stayed in a regular day job, nobody would really pay attention. You'd just be doing your own thing and be like, beliefs, schmaleefs, you know what I mean? But as soon as we start getting into stuff and we're hitting up against different things, what's the difference though of changing the outside conditions versus changing the subconscious beliefs, right? Like I could make a lot of money. Let's do 100,000 in a month. Great. I feel good about that. But what if I can't do it again ever again? Or do you know what I mean? What if it's not actually changing the core beliefs, or is it every time? Tell me more about the conditions versus internal.
Yeah, so it is, but the whole idea is that they're connecting the cause and effect of it in their mind, that they're actually doing something to get that effect. So this is a really big difference. Little children do not have to change a belief. They automatically accept it. So whatever the experience is, they don't have a belief that's contrary in their mind that's trying to push against it or say that it's something else or this is not what it is or I didn't do this. They just automatically accept it. Adults have to change their thinking. So it's literally, I have to replace this belief of how this actually occurred in my life. So if we take money, for example, most people are raised with the idea that the cause of money coming into their life is that they learn a skill and then they trade their time doing that skill and they get a paycheck. But that's not what moves money. Money is a tool that is an exchange for value. And that is always moved by a sale. That's the only thing that moves money. So even if you say, David, would you loan me $20? And I say, sure, Jamie, here's $20. That's a sale, right? That's what moves the money. But if a person doesn't understand that, when they're scared, when they're stressed out, they will default to doing things where they're just spending time. They may be being productive in some way, but not in a cause and effect way that brings money in. So they might be working on their website or writing more copy or, trying to solve a problem that really is not important in the moment. What I do is I get them working on the very specific causes that actually bring money into their business, and then have them being very aware that they're the ones that's actually creating it, from the inception of the thought and the idea of what they want to the actual strategy, and then how they interact with other individuals in order to make that transaction happen. And then just reaffirming that I did this, I really did this. And to your point, a lot of times when they first do it, their mind tries to go into, did I get lucky? Was that can that really happen again? Or did I just get lucky? And so that's where the speed comes in. The faster they do it in short repetitions, the faster they reprogram the mind, because the mind's programmed through constant spaced repetition or a sudden emotional impact. So the excitement around doing it, and then the constant spaced repetition of doing it over and over again then helps change that programming so that they learn the cause and effect of what they're doing.
Okay, so that speed is like squishing the timeline, and that's what makes it better. So they're not allowed to have the other thoughts that are crappy.
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
So the longer it is, the more of a chance there's these little annoying. Because that's the funny thing. I just did a 30-day challenge, which was noticing all of your thoughts all the time. Very difficult, not very fun. But oh my gosh, I am so negative. And it's so funny, like pre-patterned stuff from my father came up and all sorts of stuff that I don't even verbalize. And I'm a positive person. I had no clue. And so what's interesting though is that if you don't have those stories to replace it, it's just like, oh, shouldn't be doing that. Oh, shouldn't be doing that again. Right? So how do you work with somebody to actually make sure that when they are moving things faster and those thoughts come up, you're actually replacing them?
So one of the things that I do is I will say to a person, let's take whatever goal they want to achieve. And I ask them, what are the qualities, what are the values, what are all the different pieces of this goal? Just list them out, okay? And this could be money, this could be a business, it could be a specific goal. In a business, it could even be another person, like if you were looking for like an ideal partner, like what are all the values and everything? And then I ask them, if you were that thing and you were looking at what is my match from that viewpoint, from the goals viewpoint, like what would be the person that would create this? Or if it was from a partner's viewpoint, what would the opposite partner be looking for in their ideal person? Then list all of those things out. And then I have them say, now tell me, how much of those things do you do on a percentage from 0 to 100? 100 being like, I am this way all the time, or I'm 50% of the way. But here's what the real key is. It's if let's say that they that one of them is that I'm a great salesperson and I make sales 100% of the time that I'm supposed to be making sales, but not really 100%, only 50. So it's not that the other 50% is zero. It's what are you doing in that other 50% of the time? Who are you being? What are you thinking? What is your behavior? How are you reacting? Because there is always something that's filling up that other space, and that's where the growth needs to happen. So if it's 50% of the time I'm sitting around worrying, I'm procrastinating, and then the procrastination turns into playing 5 hours of World of Warcraft or watching House of Cards, or something like that, then that's what we begin to address. What is the mindset that is causing you to do that? So I do that ahead of time, so that we can pre-plan for places that they will fail. We kind of reverse engineer where they stop, because everybody has a strategy for stopping. And the funny thing about that strategy is that your subconscious mind will create a scenario, a situation, or a circumstance when it feels like you're going to change something that it's programmed to do. But in order for you to stop, it has to get you to agree with it. So if I'm going to go out and change and I say, okay, I am going to make sales calls for 8 hours a day. And all of a sudden the cat runs away. I get in a fight with my partner. I get sick, whatever. And I agree with those things as a reason to stop. I will stop every single time. But everybody's strategy to stop is the same almost with whatever they do. So if you can reverse engineer that strategy, you can then put stop gaps in there so that they literally have a different option in their brain when that happens. And they know ahead of time, like, oh, this is my strategy on how I stop. This is not just that I have to go find the dog. It's a strategy of how I actually stop working. So what they do, and then in that point is that we tell them, don't entertain the thought that gets you to stop. Entertain the strategy that's going to get you to break through. So if you focus on that, you will break through because your mind literally has another option. If it gets you to agree with it, your mind goes into a place where there's no other option. That's it. That's the only option I have, is to stop and deal with whatever this problem is.
Okay, so let's actually put that into tangible, because I love this. And it's like, well, if my cat ran away, even though technically it's an excuse, right? Somebody came to you and you're the coach and they're like, well, I was going to do this, but my cat ran away. You'd be like, okay, really? That's the thing. But give me an actual tangible where it affects people and how we're supposed to make the slice of change within it.
So that's the thing about this, that where people get so susceptible to the agreement of it, because they really are experiencing something in their life. It's not like the cat.
Well, it's not an excuse because he's gone.
Right. Yeah, he actually did run away. Okay, great. So now you have to solve this problem. Number one, do not get emotionally involved in the problem. deal with it from a solution perspective. Like, what is the solution to this? You may have to change your schedule, but that doesn't mean, so now it's going to take you 2 hours to find the cat. You've got to find 2 hours in your schedule to make that up in order to do the work.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you still have the agreement. It's just shifted the agreement, not that you have the excuse now you don't have to do the agreement.
Right. If it's something where you can actually say, this has to be dealt with, but it's not an emergency, I don't have to do it right now, I'm now going to allocate a different time on my calendar to that, or I'm going to delegate it to someone else. Because it's the emotional involvement that gets them sucked into the story.
Exactly. Okay, so that's my question. So you say a fight with a partner, well, and you've got eight hours of sales calls, this is what you're planning, and you feel like crap. And you're like, every sales call, or you start and you're like, I'm like this and I hate my life, right? And you just don't make any sales. Like, is that's technically an excuse also, but how do they play that game out?
Because we reverse engineered it ahead of time, we would recognize that part of their pattern is to get in an argument or disagreement with their partner.
Beforehand.
Right.
Ooh, that's a good excuse. Yeah. Ha ha ha. Yeah. I'm going to fight you.
So then it would be, okay, now you're going to have a conscious conversation with your partner, and you're going to say, listen, it's normal that we have disagreements, but it's not normal that we let it literally overtake our productivity during the day. So let's agree that if we have a disagreement, we're going to put it on hold and set a time aside where we can actually discuss it. Or if we're going to argue, we're going to argue. But it's not going to be when you and I both need to be productive. Now they have a different option.
Everyone's like, I want that with my husband or what? Like, let's do that. That's awesome. Well, and that's the thing to me when it's what's difficult is when you're in the moment to do this. But what you're saying is it's not about in the moment. The whole point is backing up, realizing what the actual issues are and preempting them as much as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
Okay. How do you keep that up? Because no offense, the cat runs away, you have fight. There's like a million things that could be stopping us, and it's our own fault, of course. But does it just take a really long time to preempt all of that stuff?
No, it really doesn't. Okay. Again, it's all about strategy. So I believe that any result that we want in our life is going to come from a strategy, whether it's a subconscious strategy or it's a conscious strategy. So it's really building out that strategy with a person. Then I'm a big believer in the use of our calendar, right? So I think everything in our life should be on the calendar. Now, that also means that if we just want to have free time to do whatever we feel like it, between maybe 8 and 10 at night, then we just block it off and say free time, and you can do whatever you want during that time. But if there are things that are important to you, it needs to be on the calendar. It needs to be planned. So now, first thing in the morning, what you're going to do is you're going to sit down, you're going to review your goals. What do you want to achieve that day? And you're going to really consciously say, here's what I have to do today. How am I going to choose to show up? I'm going to decide right now that I'm going to choose to show up positive, strong, be involved, be focused, be results oriented, and really prime yourself for that for the entire day. And then it becomes a habit. And the other thing with that is to get a person in a really good mindset. We'll have them do gratitude exercise in the morning. Well, Tony Robbins used to have one where he would say, who do I love? Who loves me? To really show that because when you're kind of building a business, it can be lonely at times, right? But if you're remembering that you have friends, you have family, you have people that you love that are important to you and that they love you, those are great things to make you feel not so lonely in the world. So it's about doing positive exercises, and we'll tailor them to whatever a person needs for their personality and their situation in life, so that in the morning, that's the first thing that they do, and then they start following whatever's on the calendar.
Okay, so what about, because I love, we do a exercise, and I do the exercise of a master calendar, a master schedule, because I have to put it all in there, right? That being said, I have big chunks that are completely empty because flow is really important to me. Like, I can get way more done. So how do you have the calendar thing and deal with flow? Because sometimes I'm like, I don't want it to be meeting Mondays. I don't. It's meeting Monday and I just have a million Mondays. So how do you get yourself into flow when it's already pre-scheduled?
Well, so my answer to that is that you understand yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you understand when do you flow the best, in order to do whatever it is that you're in flow around, then you schedule those days for that. So if you're better to do meeting Tuesdays and Monday is the day that you really like to be in your flow coming off a Sunday, then that day is scheduled specifically for that. But you also have some kind of an idea of what the objective of that flow is going into that. But I think that's a really great question, because you have to know yourself. When am I at my best energy? When am I at my most creative energy? When am I at my most productive energy? Or when am I at my most focused? Some people aren't morning people. Some people do it much better later in the evening. And then somebody says, oh, you need to be a morning person to succeed. And they try to get them to do something that's not part of their natural rhythm.
Yep.
Like, go with your rhythm, go with works for you, but schedule it so that it works productively.
Yeah, it's about tweaking and tweak. So, and it's funny because I used to batch all my stuff for like Tuesdays and have 8 back-to-back calls. I started losing my voice and I was like, I don't know what's going on. Oh, I shouldn't. So then I do small, like you have to tweak it so often, or I have to tweak it, I should say, not everybody, but because I'm really learning about myself and how I work and all that fun stuff too. So yeah, it's not a one size fits all, unfortunately, because it'd be way easier if you could just stamp it all out. But right. How do we do that in general? Because entrepreneurs, and you've worked with a lot of them also, there's been so much talk about anxiety and depression and issues coming up. How do we manage that stuff in entrepreneurship with what we were talking about?
So I honestly believe, and I have never found this not to be true, if I can actually work with that person, that's coming from they're doing something that they either shouldn't be doing or they don't like. And they have to control it. Mm-hmm. And because they have to control it, they won't delegate it. They won't hire people to do those things, and they won't stay in their wheelhouse. I find that if a person stays in there and you're not dealing with something that's like a past story in their life, that maybe that does need to be healed or cleared first. But if it's really just dealing with the entrepreneurial stuff, they're doing something that they don't like to be doing. And I'm all for doing only what you love to do, and then finding other people that are better than you to do the other stuff.
I love that you said that, especially because what it did, it took me back to when I was getting divorced and I was like, I must be depressed. I went on depression medication. It didn't do anything. No, I just actually needed to get divorced. Then I was happy and fine afterwards. And we're still good friends, so don't feel bad for me. We're great. But to me, I don't think we give enough credit for some of that stuff. Because one of the things that I found in interviewing so many millionaires is that they're leveling up their strengths, the things that they do feel in flow, the things that they do love doing. But when you're only at a certain level in business and you can't outsource everything, or then it compromises your safety because now you have too much, you don't have enough cash flow and you're scared, right? There's all these balances. So how do they actually traverse that? Hey, I hate doing this stuff, but I can't hire somebody that's really good yet because I'll feel even more unsafe that I'm not making enough money.
So being resourceful is probably the best skill set that somebody could learn in their business, because there's going to always be, that's what an entrepreneur has to do. They have to solve problems and they have to learn how to be resourceful. So what I will do is kind of grade them on where they are in their ability to do that.
Really? I love that.
If they're weak in that area, I will have them do things that will cause them to be strong in that before we go like crazy into their business to build something massive.
Like what?
Because they'll just shut down. They will totally collapse under, how am I going to hire this person? I don't have enough money. And the truth is, you don't need the money to hire the person. You need to hire the person and then you'll make the money. But that's really hard for a person that's not resourceful to grasp onto. And then you've got somebody sitting in the corner in a fetal position because they like, how am I going to pay the bills?
Yep.
So I totally get it. So it's about helping them be resourceful. Then the other alternative to that is if there are certain things that they just can't seem to get past, right? It just isn't going to happen. They have to find somebody else who can and put them in charge of that. And then they have to trust that that person is going to complete their vision in that area of the business.
I've done that before. I'm like, I suck at this. Yeah. What was that?
Some people just aren't good at hiring, like hiring talent. So if you can at least find one person that's good at that and put them in charge of it, then you're good. You don't have to worry about that because it's not your core skill set. So You find somebody else that's really good at finding and sourcing and hiring talent.
Well, it's admitting that we're not good at something as entrepreneurs, which is also kind of difficult, right? One of
Well,
the
yeah. Right.
Wait, I'm not good. It's funny because whenever I chat with people, they're like, "I just need to clone myself," and then half the time I'm like, "No, you don't. No, don't. That's horrible, right? Find people
Right.
that are way better in different skill sets than you." How do you find the things that you're not good at besides the pain of going through like hiring and trying and trying? I hired horribly bad for so long,
Yeah.
and it's a skill set and you have to get better at it, or you don't and you find somebody else that's better. But how do you start, instead of having to go through the amount of hires that I went through, how do you find that you're bad at something or admit that?
I think well, that's a good question. With me personally, it was being very honest with myself when I started my business. I knew, like, remember having this conversation going, okay, that when you show up to work every day, you don't always give it 100%. If you're going to start a business, you can't do that. Are you willing to accept that as a reality and really do that? So it was kind of like, wow, that's a really tough question, So I decided right off the bat that I was going to be as honest with myself as I could, no matter how much I didn't like it, and then do whatever was quite required to do that. So I found out things that I was good at that I didn't know I was good at, and I also found out things I was bad at that I didn't think that I was bad at. And then I realized, okay, that's it. Just let it go. Let somebody else do it. Like, I tell people all the time, I quit high school. I was not a good student as a kid. I do not spell well. I should not be writing things. But what I do well is I speak. So I can do that and have somebody else write it, right? I do video. I can do that and have people turn that into copy. That writing copy and writing anything really is not my core skill set. But as well as I do, there's a lot of stuff that has to be written. So I use what I'm good at and let other people then take it and turn it into what it needs to be turned into.
The whole reason why I started this podcast, because I suck at writing. So I totally get you right there. And it's so funny. I was reading the reviews on your book. My book has reviews of spelling issues. So does yours. I was like, yes, I like him more. I totally have spelling issues too. But
I tell people that spelling is a perception.
My daughter will love that.
Grammar fanatics do not like that answer.
I totally agree with you. That's hilarious. So how do you do this for your client? So let's say you have a new client and you don't totally know what they're good at and what they're not good at. How can you start to flesh out what they are and what they're not?
When I take on a new client, they go through an interview process. There we have an evaluation form that they have to fill out, tells us about them personally, about their business. We find that if you give a person that evaluation and you let them fill it out, they will be more honest on that than if you sit down and give them a face-to-face interview. So then we read it, go over it, then we talk to them and we ask questions about different things. We'll ask them for examples, like, tell me why you think you're good at this and you're not getting a good result. So then it's about just getting them to the realization of what they are good at and aren't good at. And I also just come from the standpoint of, what do you like to do and what don't you like to do? Because if they don't like to do it, they're probably not going to get good at it, right?
Definitely.
What do you like to do?
That's awesome. Like, I don't want to play the piano. Mom, don't make me. I'm going to suck at it this entire, right? Like I'm like a little kid. Don't make me hire. So when we start to pull apart what that is that's what's giving them the job description? And can you, especially entrepreneurs are weird, right? So I'm allowed to say that.
For sure.
So we like the weirdest things. And so if we were to try and like pull together a job description, is that okay for the business owner to be like, and I do this thing over here, and I do this thing over here, and I do this thing over here, and then I'm trying to get everybody else in the org chart to do all the rest of the stuff, even though it doesn't make any logical sense team structure wise?
Yeah, I think it totally is. I think that there's this unique thing about entrepreneurs that we seem to have this ability to thrive in the chaos that we create around ourselves, right? So it's really strange, but most of the entrepreneurs I know create their own unique chaos that they seem to thrive in. And if they can just find the right people that will work in that, then they're good. So that's just a company culture type thing. I think.
That's hilarious. Well, I mean, so I was just thinking of like, I'm going to end up being the eccentric aunt or whatever, right? I'm going
Yeah,
to be like, she's crazy and wears weird costumes randomly because that's normal, right? And
right.
so, but as an entrepreneur, we kind of have to pretend like we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
But you're saying if we actually go and dive deeper into that, the chaos is okay, just as long as you can have the people that can handle the chaos with you.
Yeah. I mean, I know people that run companies that would drive me nuts if I had to work there, and they're uber successful. Um, how they operate in that chaos, I have no idea. Uh, I've been in meetings with some of them, and I think to myself, this is the craziest thing I've ever experienced. And then they create something that's golden out of all of that craziness. And they'll be fighting and, like disagreeing on everything. And then all of a sudden they've got this amazing product or service and a marketing system that works and everything. So for some people, that's just the way that it is for them, I think.
So it's really about knowing yourself. What do you think are the best ways
Yeah.
to know yourself then too?
So I think self-awareness is probably one of the greatest assets a person can have. And I think it's also one of the most difficult things to attain. And let me tell you why I think that. When we're kids, there is a very interesting way that parents get control over us. We're born with the susceptibility that we need safety, which we do. Like when we're born, if our parents aren't around, we would die. It's just a fact. So we have to learn to communicate with the parent. The parent has to learn to communicate with us in a way where not only are we safe, but we feel safe inside. If that doesn't happen, then we've got dysfunction going on, right? So as this dysfunction starts to go on with a child, and as they're taught with the ideas of shame and guilt, which are run by most societies around the world as like behavioral strategies to get somebody to stop, because once you shame and guilt somebody, you don't have to do it again. They'll take it on themselves and they'll do it for the rest of their life unless they change it. The unique thing is that a child has a natural way that they want to express themselves, their own unique, authentic self. If any of that expression makes a parent feel uncomfortable, they will stop that expression. The child then suppresses that and has to come up with an alternative role or pattern of way of being in order to make the mother or father happy so that they feel safe and secure. So now you have a kid that grows up and they're an adult. They only have 2 or 3 ways that they can express themselves, and they don't understand their own authenticity. We work with people on showing them how to find that authenticity, and then how do they express it by getting rid of the shame and guilt. So when they get rid of the shame and the guilt, they're not thinking about what other people think. They don't really care what other people think. And they're just going to be, do, and have who they want to be in the world. And everything changes like night and day because they actually find their authentic self for real. And then they become fully self-expressed.
And that's the whole point of exactly what we were talking about before, because then they can live in the strength and the things that they like to do without shame or guilt or anything like that too. And then most likely they will see more millions on the outside, like we were talking about before.
Absolutely.
Oh, I love this stuff. And it also makes me go, oh crap, did I screw up my kids a lot? I didn't realize it beforehand. So we'll send them to you sometime. Exactly, right? Oh, my daughter listens to every single one of these shows. So she'll hear how I talk about her. Oh, I screwed you up, honey. Love you. Bye. I have to start ending. Unfortunately, I have a million more notes. So I'll have to have you back on the show because I love diving deep into some of this stuff. But what is one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million?
Take one thing that is directly tied to them making more money, make a decision to do it, and don't stop until you get the result. So one of the very first things that I learned was to make a decision, like a decision where you're not going to change it tomorrow because you don't feel well or it's raining, but you're going to make a decision and actually follow through. Because what you do when you do that is you start to rebuild trust with yourself. And a person who could completely rebuild their own trust is totally unstoppable. Because if they can trust themselves, they can follow through on anything.
Oh, it gave me goosebumps. I love that. Where do we find more about you online? What's your website? I know, where do we get the book? All that fun stuff.
DavidNeagle.com. There's an interesting free download there called You Were Born to Be a Success. And it really gets people in the right mindset of thinking that success is actually their birthright. We were not born to fail or be enslaved by ideologies that don't work. So I suggest they go there and take a look at what we have, and they'll either like it or they won't.
And you have an amazing rags to riches story too that everyone should buy the book for, so they can read the whole thing, because it's insane. Near-death experiences, all sorts of craziness that was in his life, and that's why you know so much. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, David. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening and investing in yourself with your time. I so appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would be forever grateful if you would be willing to leave a rating or review in whatever app you use for your podcast. I know that's what really bumps it up in the rankings, and I would so appreciate your time, especially if you've been a long-time listener. But of course, if you like this episode and you're brand new, thank you for being here too. Have an amazing, amazing day.